Welcome to MagicGatheringStrat. I'm Dan, and today we're going to have a pauper chat with Deluxeicoff. Hello, Deluxeicoff.
Hello again. Good to be back.
Thank you for coming back. Today we're going to talk about two decks, and the first one is this fascinating build of white-red with a very interesting name.
Yeah, this deck, to be very clear, is designed by the player TurboKitty 3000. We've been kind of chatting back and forth about builds and stuff, and he wouldn't quite share with me the design. I was able to kind of reverse engineer it, and then I placed with it, and unfortunately my list made it public. His didn't. He had won quite a few. I think he had 2 or 3 4-0s with it. Very good answer to the metagame. But then people immediately assumed I made it, and they're like, "Why do you call it TurboKitty?" And I'm like, or BorosKitty, and I was like, "Well, Kitty for obviously the guy that made it, and then Boros because of the colors." But this is another neat example of I think people have those auto-include build types. Like, okay, I'm going to make red, white. Well, it has to be landfall, right? It's like, no, it doesn't. You don't have to shove in step links and the artifact that triggers them again, and then that plated GOP and stuff. Which any single time you see a deck that's Boros an attempt at it, it's just that boring, same old, B- strategy that has never quite been competitive enough.
And now Electricker is around as well, so.
Right. Yeah. It's just it's one of those. I think everybody kind of goes down the wormhole the same way, and it's very hard to unthink that. And I think that'd be a good theme for this particular podcast. Is these are two decks that we're going to be covering are completely outside of the box. And maybe this one inspired the one I'll talk about later a bit. But basically, BorosKitty is a control deck, and a lot of people, they see the quick start of like the Glinthawk or the Kuldortha Rebirth, and they think, oh, I'm just going to run them over. It's like, where's the Bushwhacker? It's like, no. This is a control deck through and through. You sit and wait. You draw cards. You cast Skyfisher to redraw the artifact to draw another card. And half the time, this deck wins, and it feels like a burn deck because it'll be like the, 10 turns in, and it's like, 4 Galvanic Blast to the head, and lightning bolt and you're dead. It's like, whoa, where'd that come from? While you're holding the ground. But what I was talking about with Fiendclops the other day about this being a bad matchup, you could see why. I mean, the Galvanic Blast is obviously crazy good card. Then on top of that, you have Lightning Bolt and Journey to Nowhere, and then a floating Oblivion Ring, and the redundancy of the artifacts to draw everything back. It's a really pretty design.
I was taken aback with when I played the first. I think I will include this if you're seeing this video in an article. I think I will include my first match with this deck when I played against Stompy, and I didn't realize that I wanted to be the controller. I thought, I can raise Stompy, and that didn't go very well.
It's funny how colors have that aftertaste to them, because you see red and it's like I'm the aggressor, and it's like no, not.
Yeah, I'm Boros. I'm gonna march over them.
Yeah, there's a lot of psychology you got to overcome when playing it, but it's the ability to gain life is always a paramount strategy. I believe the UR Fiend deck is about the only one that I think you get away with it just because of sheer speed and potential. But whenever I build a deck or look at a list, if it can gain life even a little bit, it's like a checklist. You want things, you want removal that isn't dead in your hand, like Lightning Bolt and Galvanic Blast. You want to be able to gain life. These are little checklists that not having dead cards. I could argue the Journey to Nowhere, but even that can be kind of fun because of the Skyfisher. It really, let's say they remove it and you have to eat your own Glinthawk or something with a Journey, and then you just bounce it back with the Skyfisher later on, and you're good to go.
Yeah, Galvanic Blast was quite interesting in this list when I played it too, because you had to check the number of artifacts. It wasn't like in Affinity, you had to make sure you had 3.
And similar to the black-blue Trinket control deck, where it uses artifacts, but it's not totally hoodwinked by their loss. It's like sometimes people will bring in Gorilla Shamans, and you just kind of giggle. It's like, yeah, that's cute. It's like, have fun. It's kind of a dead draw. I mean, there's times when you might be really mana screwed and you only draw the artifact lands, and then it'll feel like a backbreaker. But the flexibility of not being all in into that kind of strategy is very strong. And A few standout cards. Remember the Fallen is just amazing.
That impressed me a lot.
Yeah, and might want to go up to 2 on that. I don't know. This build seems pretty strong. There's also 2 Faithless Lootings. Version I placed with had 4, and it was just for that crazy repeatability and redundancy of like, if I don't like my hand, cool, I'll keep it. If not, you just shuffle stuff away. And then with creatures like the Sanctum Gargoyle bringing stuff back, it feels really good. It moves along pretty nicely.
Yeah. Are you telling me you're not sideboarding in shamans again in the mirror?
I maybe, gosh, I haven't played the mirror.
I did yesterday.
I guess they'd be relevant for late game. I think maybe the Core Sanctifiers might be a better call there, or just the Lone Missionaries, try to stay up on life. They, obviously, as you can tell by the sideboard, the thing this deck fears is the deck that's falling out of favorability, and the reason this is an option, both decks we're talking about today, is the Stone Rain and the Pyroblast for the fissure explosion that happened about a month or 2 ago, and is slowly dwindling now, and you don't see it as often. But obviously, that's kind of an auto loss to this deck, and if that deck's on the upsurge, you don't want to be playing this. But
it's like any control deck, basically.
Yeah, if you expect a lot of Stompy, a lot of Affinity, which is everywhere right now, this is a really solid choice. But it does take a while, and it fell out of favoritism for me for that reason, because I like to do other things while I'm in a daily, or whether it's laundry or go wash the car or do something. It's I don't like to spend 50 minutes beating somebody, and this can go pretty long sometimes.
This must be the slowest deck you have ever played, almost.
Yeah, the one we're talking about next might trump that one, but the inevitability of it really feels like it speeds things up because people quit really fast. So,
well, whereas this deck was a surprise and unexpected, there's still been Kuldortha Rebirth decks before.
Right.
And the deck we're going to talk about now, it was an even bigger surprise. This was like, what the... Yeah, please talk about this draft deck.
You're speaking of my gray ghost creation.
Yeah.
This I failed a lot with this, as you've seen on the Facebook account I have just for Magic. I finally had to go out and make a Deluxeicoff for Facebook because friends and family that don't play Magic got tired of me posting things and kind of sounding like I'm speaking another language, and so I was like, I'll just make it'll be like a pseudo fictional character forum, and I'll put my deck list there and get feedback from people that want to follow my ideas there. But and you can see there on the Facebook link that the iterations this went through, and again, like we were talking, where you have those auto includes, like, oh, you're playing black white, well, you've got to play the life gaining hag, and then the enchantment that should have it up in front of me. The black-white enchantment that makes it stronger if it's black and white. And I started with those, and it was doing okay in certain matchups, but it definitely wasn't winning like I want to design a deck to do. And so as I kept skimming away the cuteness, the stuff that's put in quotes supposed to be in an Arzhov deck, and I started noticing that Extort was winning like every game, and it wasn't really because of attacking, and I just needed to draw things out. So it slowly started turning into just this uber kill everything, get some Extort guys out and go for the dome. And so I finally last night, actually just about 12 hours ago, I 4-0'd with it, and I was really happy with the list. I faced Affinity, Burn, Mono Blue, and Affinity, and it did what it was supposed to do. I kill basically everything on the board with Affinity, and you start getting that lifelink guy out and attacking, gaining life, and every single spell you play is that power shift struggle. And it's really interesting too when you get the trifecta, where if you get like 3 Extort guys out and you draw a land, now it's a lightning helix because of Raven's Crime, which is by then going to be either in your hand or the board. And so if it's a spell with lightning helix. If it's a land, it's a lightning helix. And it's phenomenal when it gets going. And
how many lands do you play out before you start Raven's Crime and them away? It's 4 or
well, that's
5?
That's the reason for the Basilica. I'm not sure how to pronounce that.
I think it's Basilica.
Yeah,
but I don't speak English very well.
Some would argue I don't either, but no, the 4 or 5 is good. Obviously, if you've got multiple Basilicas out, then you don't need that many. And if you don't see the Raven's Crime, and it's tricky because that's why I wanted to design a deck that didn't mind getting flooded. And between the removal and the extort triggers, it's fine to have quite a few lands in your hand. And because I do play 3 quicksands as removal spells, which are really proving to be just one of the best cards in the format. I was really tickled by their inclusion and stopping ninjas or metal sentinels. It's just there's so many decks that it's just this auto stop. It's like, nope, give me some more time. And I think there's 18 or 19 removal spells in this thing, and it gets pretty gross. It's able, like I said, you stall, kill everything out there, and they're going to kill your stuff too. That's why the unearths are in there, and then before you know it, you got 1 or 2 extort guys out. And I was playing earlier. The guy wasn't too serious, but he put on a pacifism onto the extort bat. What's that thing's name?
Screecher.
Yeah, and I was like, it said cannot attack or block, and I was like, and I think I wrote, nor was I planning to. It was like just because the way the board state was, and I think the next thing went off for like 5 the next turn. So the first builds I had of this thing, that Electrickery was kind of a backbreaker. A lot of I had a bunch of life gaining 1/1 flyers and stuff like that, and I wanted to play the Kombaja, which is in the sideboard, but I had to side out so much of my stuff that gained life. I only had the 1 toughness spot. There's no Thunder Cheeks in this one, and that with the noticing of how powerful Extort was, and if I could just keep the board clear, I'd be fine. And then the inclusion of 3 Crypt Rats, which are obviously just any sort of rogue strategy or weenies, and being able to unearth a rat and trigger it for 1. A lot of my guys have a 2 toughness backside other than the vampire, which I only have 3 of now. And obviously the rats dies, so it takes probably the most popular removal spell in the format, Electrickery, and it neuters it, because there's, even if it does work, it's going to get it's a 1-for-1, and I just unearth whatever it was, and I gain 3 or 4 life off of it and attack you with it again. So lot of fun, and it's truly bottom up design. I knew what I kind of wanted to do, and I just tailored it to the metagame, and I wrote that on Facebook. It's probably one of the happiest feelings when you have a genuinely pure all your brew and it 4-0s against a really good field, and I had really good players that I had to go through. That's a really neat feeling, and I think that's kind of the desire to play rogue. Everybody kind of wants to get to that. But I got to remind everybody, I went through 3 dailies before this of just crash and burn, where it was really close, but I lost. To learn these hard knocks this way. Obviously, this is preset for the metagame, and same with BorosKitty. I fear Fissure Storm, so Choking Sands, Evil Presence, and the Guardian obviously come in there.
It's amazing to see this. It's from Alpha, right? Evil Presence?
Yeah.
It's been like a worthless card in my binder since 1994, and now you're playing it in daily events.
Yeah. I was about to go with Contaminated Ground, the one that does the 2 damage when you tap it. And that might be a more valid option because this is a slower deck, but whenever I can pretty much shut something off for cheaper, I'm going to always go that route. And Choking Sands, 2 damage isn't to be laughed at, and its ability to blow up Cloud Post, obviously, and then I want the Guardian there for insurance. If they do pull it off, I might be able to sneak in that last bit of damage with a Guardian going in for the victory there. So there's also the neat occurrence of, let's say they do fissure everything, and you have a swamp unearth play. It's like the same kind of with Elves logic, where with the Essence Warden or with the Birch Lore, where you can just shovel out stuff that should take you 2 or 3 turns to do, and with Unearth, you've got it right there. So it's very, very flexible, and I'm 11-0 against Affinity, 3-0 against Stompy. Yeah, I mean, this thing is a wrecking ball to Stompy and Affinity. Blue makes me nervous, but I haven't lost to it yet. I think that's just 2-0 right now, just like, fairies and stuff. And Disfigure's a really big opponent there. A lot of times, obviously, you kind of want to bait the counters out with the creatures because you have Unearth. And you can, use Disfigure or Doomblade as, in response to fairies, and after their hard counters, it's you can start building back pretty fast. And it's funny, I tell you, that those quicksands against ninjas, instead of ninjas hitting you repeatedly, they hit you like once, and then it's if that. I've had a few people mess up and they come at me with a ninja. It's like, oh, eat some quicksand, have a mouthful of sand, and see how that tastes. But again, for running this many lands for the Raven's Crime trigger, and also to be able to use quicksand instead of as a bluff, it's a true removal spell against Affinity. I'm always taking out Frogmites with it, and then it'll be an edict for like the Myrrh, and then Journey to Nowhere. I mean, it's very rare to even get hit with Affinity if you draw just decently, which I just caught myself almost keeping a hand because of my aggressive play style. I had really good mana, and I had like a Tithe Drinker and like a Syndicate and maybe like a Crime, and it looked like what an aggressive Orzhov deck would be, and I was like, no, I'm playing against Affinity, got to remember my play. So I sent it back, and I had like 2 Doomblades, 2 Journey to Nowheres, and like some land, and it's like, that's a keeper against Affinity. You wait, and as I went on, I think the third version of this build had every single extort creature 4 of, and as I went on, it's like, the more of a late game card. Obviously it's when the board's completely empty and the person's just hell bent and they're trying to top deck, having a Tithe Drinker out really makes things go fast because it gets you out of trouble real easy. And especially like against Burn last night in round 3, that was unearthing the Tithe Drinker was game, because obviously you gain even 3 or 4 life against the standard Burn list, and it's pretty hard for them to beat you no matter what the deck you're playing. The math just doesn't work unless they have like a god draw.
This must be a pretty bad day for Burn when you run into this.
Yeah, from turn 3 on, it's like a consistent, ticking up of life all the time, and obviously they're Kiln Fiends, and anything else can't get anywhere near you. And if they aim at your creatures, that's cool because it's buying you time, and then you just reanimate them, gain life, and swing again. So I'm really tickled with it. I was debating calling it Halloween because it's obviously kind of has that deck, and I'm a huge fan of Halloween. But I was thinking back, and this is the first deck since Deluxe Red that's completely my own thing. It wasn't based on anything. It was, you know what I mean? It just it was my own. So I wanted to throw a little bit of my ego in there because my middle name is Gray. So I went with the name. I just call it Gray Ghost now, and it makes sense because it's black and white. What do you do when you mix those 2 colors together? You get gray, and it has that kind of haunting theme with the Halloween aspect. So I like to call it Gray Ghost for what it's worth.
Gray Ghost it is.
It was funny because a guy in the 3rd round, I had some really good sports last night. That a lot of times, you come up with a brew like this, and people are like, "What is this crap?" Oh, you're such a noob, or you don't know what you're doing, and everybody's heard it all before. And I had so many people just like, "Holy crap, that's a cool deck!" Good job. And it was like, wow, it's like there's like polite people losing to me right now. That was kind of neat. But I was joking around on the chat, and one of them said, "What's that called?" And I think I said, "Don't laugh at works.dek." It was like, that was my affectionate name for it in testing, because when it's one of those, you just look at it and go, what a pile of crap, and then it's like, oh wait, it beat me again. It's like, oh no. And so real quickly, one of the tips on playing this deck is, I have a note here that I want to make sure to talk about. I already talked about the Lightning Helix logic, but it's I call it criming to nothing. A lot of times, similar with the Pyroblast, targeting a land to trigger like a Kiln Fiend, the person doesn't have to have a land in their hand to Raven's Crime them. And there's sometimes when you want to Raven's Crime yourself, if you have an Unearth and you're depending on the matchup, like you have a Crypt Rats against like a Swarm strategy, and it's the first turn of the game. Raven's Crime yourself, throw your rats in play, second Swamp, clear the board on turn 2. That's a nice little interaction there. But always remember, if you have your extort guys out and the person doesn't have, and you have your lands set like 4 or 5, and you're good to go. If they don't have a card in their hand, that's great. Strip it anyway, because you're going to gain 2 to 5 life on it. It's a neat little play, and one of the neat psychologies of this deck is because of the presence of Raven's Crime, you don't get people hoarding like against a control deck mentality where it's like, oh, I'm going to wait till I have 4 or 5 creatures and I'm going to play them all at once and see if he can recover. And it's like, you can't do that because I'm just going to keep ripping your hand and gaining life. So you've got that affinity player has to put out that stuff and just hope you don't have the removal, which you always do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could see it. It does look like a pile. I will be the first to admit that. And I've always liked black. I've just never been able to play it. And who's to say, I might crash and burn the next few times with it, but I was just so tickled that the list went up against good decks. I played really good people, and there were a few blowouts, but a lot of them were really close, and I still have a lot to learn with the deck, but I'm pretty sure this list is very close to, optimal. And
Journey
the
to
rogue
Nowhere.
flavor is great.
Sorry.
Yes.
Go on.
No, go ahead.
Journey to Nowhere. Is that included to keep the color balance, or does it have any advantage over black removal?
Not really. I don't have the Skyfishers there. It is more of a balance thing. The occasional, times when it might be more relevant to like against a Fissure player the other day. I purposely journeyed my own Kingpin's Pet, knowing that. Just to get that permanent out there, and I knew, I guess a good player that wouldn't work, but I knew this particular player is kind of like one of those, I call them counter happy people, where it's like no matter what you play, if they have a counter, they're just gonna counter it, and they don't give it too much thought. And so, in the same logic went for this Fissure player. I knew it's like, there's 3 permanents out. Well, I'm going to Fissure up to 14 and bounce everything. And it's like, okay, it's like, have fun taking 5 minutes to do that. And sure enough, it was just like clockwork. He fell for it. But I mean, that's silly because you're playing to a lowest common denominator, and you never want to do that in a tournament strategy. But so yeah, I could definitely see, there might be a flaw in my design with it. I'm just, the flexibility it offers, with regards to, maybe there is a protection from black scenario, or who knows. It has backfired a few times. I mean, I've had people remove their own creature or bounce them, and then I have to swap my own guy. And with the absence of Skyfisher, which was in the first few builds, I don't really have a way to get that back. But in the end, I don't really need one. It's this deck comes out from left field, and people don't know what the hell you're doing the whole time. And it's like they think the creatures are going to kill them. And it's like, no, sometimes they won't, sometimes it will. It's just this weird, it's a very like Bruce Lee / Jack Kundo style, where it's like, we're going to go high. Okay, I'll kick you in the shins now, or, it has a lot of flexibility that way, and obviously a ton of time, because against the majority of the decks, you're just killing everything that hits the ground. And, I don't even run, Song and Blood or Sign in Blood. I was thinking about that, and it never seems so far to run shy of removal. I mean, you can see how much there is. It's gratuitous.
There is a lot of removal. Any sideboarding thoughts?
Yeah, sometimes against Affinity, I'll bring in 2 Guardian of the Guild packs. That same logic going for when we had that Elves chat about, the mainstays of that deck being the Atog or like the Carapace Forger, and it acts as like another removal spell that they can't really deal with there. So if you are shy on removal, that buys you so many turns. I don't know if that's quite the right answer. Just this morning, I was warming up with it, and I left it out, and I was just as happy to see Crypt Rats in its place. Just clear the board, and trigger for so much damage. But right now, I mean, it's a pretty simple plan. the only deck I'm really afraid of is the Fissure Storm. That's the Presence and the Guardian and the Choking Sands come in, and obviously you'd probably lose the Journey to Nowheres and the Edicts, and that's the neat thing about these kind of all-in strategies. You can have these transformative sideboards that just again come out of left field, and they're like, wait a minute, I thought that deck was doing this, and it's like, no. So I was really tempted to move the Witch's main deck and have all black land destruction in the sideboard. There's plenty of quality black land destruction. You could have 15 of them, but I thought that might be a little bit of overkill, and I wanted to have a game-winning plan against, it is a mid-range deck, so the Guardian of the Guild Pack definitely gets you there.
And this is the deck you are going to play in the daily in 20 minutes, right?
Yeah, wish me luck. Hopefully I don't sound like an idiot and crash and burn go 0-2 with it, but after last night's 4-0, like I said, it wasn't timeouts or people not showing it. It was some quality wins and against really good decks, and I was on pins and needles the whole time, and I think third round came by, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm 3-0. If I win one more, this is going to be crazy. And I won, and it was like, oh gee, what's going on? And I just feel myself learning with the deck as it went on too. So hopefully though there might be some more observations, and your note about Journey to Nowhere, maybe that will turn into just another black removal spell at instant speed. Who knows? Right now, I kind of like it where it's at. I'm sure my logic's a little flawed, and there might be a better build or two, but right now, I'm all about the Grey Ghost.
Yeah, seeing this innovation, that is 8 weeks ago, I was almost quitting Pauper because I thought Fissure decks are everywhere, and this format is just broken. And so much has happened in the last month.
It really has.
Really.
Yeah, and I can't really explain why. I don't see any lists that are obscenely biased towards Fissure, but it does seem like it just either people got tired of playing it, or maybe just every deck had figured out how to play better against it and brought in so much more hate. Who knows? Because I'm not playing it.
I think just a lot of clever people thought a lot about how to beat Fissure and managed to find the solution.
Yeah, well, I was, you obviously, against the flicker tricks, you have Beckon Apparition available, which was in my first build, or Edge of Divinity was the card I was trying to find earlier, where it's I'm going to make this, vampire a 5/4 with lifelink, and I'm going to make my King Pet a 5/5 flyer, and that's awesome when it works, but then there's 4 games when, gosh, I wish that was just a removal spell right now, because Extort is the thing that's winning the game, not these home run, oh my gosh, I drew this, and I'm going to, that's the Luxac sort of stuff, the Nip Gullion, that's the lifelink creature, and it's similar to what we were talking about with Boros, where people immediately have to do the landfall thing. And I fell into the trap with the first build of this, and I'm like, I've got to put Edge of Divinity in there because I've got these, these creatures, and it's going to make them better. And it's well, creatures don't need to be better. They just, you need to be killing stuff, clearing the board, and extorting. And so it's genuinely just a really weird new play, and maybe the metagame will shift and it'll be irrelevant, but I'm having fun with it. It's not a deck I'm used to playing that way, but Extort's just a hoot. It's a fun mechanic to play. A lot of times you'll tap in a Bacilla, and you want to use your generic mana of the Quicksand, because you want to have the color for white or black to pay the Extort fees if you're casting something with a generic mana in it. So that's another little quick tip to keep in mind if you're not on defense too hard.
Yeah. Tithe Drinker is another card from Dragon's Maze. Are there any other Return to Ravnica block cards that you're looking at for Classic Pauper that you haven't yet seen played?
No, but I wish I would have known you were going to ask that. I might have been able to come up with something, but I was just playing against a guy who was, always trying to make land destruction work, and I enlightened him, and I think I did this on David's article on MagicGatheringStrat. He has that great series about cards that aren't popular and should be, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's David Schaffer's Thoughtcast series on MagicGatheringStrat.com.
Yeah, that's a great one. But there's I think it's Turf Wound. People can't play lands and you draw a card because the tempo of land destruction is what kills it. And sometimes destructing land isn't that big of a deal, but the redundancy, issue, like with the goblins and the Mog raiders and the sledders, and there's the reason those decks work, and we've been over this. That's that redundancy. That's why the extort mechanic works, because every creature's got it in this deck. But there's a card called Sophotora, I think is the pronunciation, and it's the same thing as Turf Wound. It's a red instant, can't draw a land, or can't play a land, and you draw a card. It's like a half turn slower because it draws on the next upkeep. Yep. But I was kind of tickled by those cards just because of the redundancy and kind of going with a new angle of like, instead of blowing up lands, how about just a tempo play of stifling them for like 3 or 4 turns while maybe you've got a Kiln Fiend going active, or who knows, you Blastoderm or whatnot. Red green's obviously a kind of a nice color combination because of the acceleration of the elves, but that's for another time and place. But yeah, I just focused on what the colors do best and look at what people always do, and then maybe look to the side and see, hey, is this other strategy viable? And in this case, it was. And through trial and error, as I don't want to come across like, hey, I made this thing and it won, and it's like, because as you saw me crash and burn 3 times with it, and it's public knowledge on Facebook under Deluxeicoff, if you just want to see the kind of the evolution of it and my thoughts on the process. And 4 days ago I thought it was X, Y, and Z, and I would have argued with myself, but now it's like I know better. So it's just neat I like doing that too, because it pokes fun at yourself and you see like what an idiot you can be sometimes. But at the same time, it's neat to have a track record of how this thing was built over time. So
I'll include the link to the Facebook page in the show notes.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to add about this deck?
No, it's a little too early in the game. We'll see. Hopefully I'm playing it another week. I probably won't play it all the time because it does take a little bit longer than I like, but right now the newness of it is worth it, and so I'm having a good time.
I can't wait to try it. I have one final question for you before I let you go and play. There was some unclearness about the banning announcement that was supposed to come in the end of April. It didn't come. They said that online formats such as Pauper would have banning announcements monthly. Mm-hmm. But we still haven't got the banning announcement, right?
Yeah.
And they normally do empty banning announcements just to show that they have done the announcement. So what do you think of the health of the Pauper metagame?
Well, obviously it's very biased towards Stompy and Affinity right now, and I wish I knew why. Like we were just talking about Fissure Storm's kind of slow exit. I can't really see those 2 decks as the main reason why that would be occurring, but it's almost like a stock market self-correcting itself or something. It just seems like whether it's through attrition or people getting tired of the deck or whatnot, it's like fixing itself. And I think it's quite healthy just because of the fact that decks like BorosKitty or Grey Ghost can show up and do well. I mean, if you look back not so long ago, half your sideboard had to be able to beat Empty the Warrens or Grape Shot, and there wasn't much room for innovation. Where you like a list like this would have to have Echoing Decays in it. You're not hindered by that. So there's good and bad to it. I definitely think something that the lands of being, maybe it's restricted to one Locust land or something, or a Ghostly Flicker. The problem is, blue just has so much power, and makes you wonder if they're going to ban Fissure Storm or not. I personally think Snap and Cloud of Fairies are like probably the top 2 spells that I think would fix a lot of things, and slow down Muckfey quite a bit, and get those degenerate draws out of the place. But you got to be really careful with the ban hammers and what you ban, and not my place to say. Like I said, I think right now, this last couple of weeks, it's actually been a pretty darn healthy format. You genuinely don't know what you're going to be sitting across from. You're probably going to play Affinity and Stompy during 4 rounds, but other than that, you have no idea, and I like that.
Yeah, it has been. It's so different, and nothing has really changed.
Yep.
So it's fascinating.
It is.
Thank you so much for your time and for chatting about Pauper with me.
You got it. Thank you, Dan.
Good luck in the tournament.
You got it. And everybody vote for Dan when Player of the Year comes up, and maybe send him to Seattle so he can represent the players in the what is that, the Community Cup Challenge thing.
Yeah, and they lost last year and got us a Soros path.
You got to go represent, because you're the most prolific person I've ever met on with regards to the format and keeping it healthy and just interesting. So kudos to you, my friend.
Thanks. Speak to you later.
Okay. Cheers. Adios.